But I guess wanting more civilians to live isn't a good enough excuse for you. Hello, and welcome back to Hot Take with Hila on JTV. Today we're going to be answering a TikToker who seemed to have a lot of questions for Zionists that were just so pressing he couldn't wait to finish his cigar and get off his boat.
To all those Israeli supporters, I really want to understand your position. First off, your simple excuse is that when I all kill us is total bullshit.
Well, sir, could I interest you in looking up Article 7 of the Hamas Charter? The day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight the Jews, killing the Jews, when the Jew will hide behind stones and trees. The stones and trees will say, "O Muslims, O Abdullah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him." Or it might be worth mentioning that like a month ago, Hamas political bureau member Fatih Hamad made this little speech.
امعطوا رقاب اليهود كلها هي تقف على العرق من هان 5 شيكل تشتري لك سكينه واضيه مضيها وهنا على طول حزه 5 شيكل انك تذل دوله الكافر.
He seems like a nice guy, doesn't he? Or if you don't want to talk about Hamas, why don't you talk about the Palestinian Authority and the Martyrs Fund? In 2017, an estimated $183 million from foreign aid was used to fund salaries of thousands of shekels per month to any citizen of the Palestinian Authority who'd murdered an innocent Jew. So yeah, we don't really buy this whole "they're not trying to kill us" bit. Yes, these governments do not represent the views of all Palestinians, but their policies actively harm us, and we are well within our rights to be vocal about it and defend ourselves.
How can you justify not treating people as equals?
You know what, this is a tough question, and it is something I struggle with as an Israeli. There are certain citizens who are blocked from areas their families have been living in for thousands of years. They're denied access to their holiest site, and in the rare times when they can access it, they can't pray there or risk arrest. And the same people who have control over their holiest site have taken over another one of their holiest sites, despite the fact that it has little significance to them, and they only allow them entrance a couple times a year. This same group is forced to join the military when no other group of citizens are. I think it's about time we call out these policies that deny certain freedoms to the Jews of Israel, who are banned from Area A of Judea and Samaria, their native homeland, who aren't allowed to pray on the Temple Mount, who are denied access to the burial sites of Isaac and Rebekah, as well as many other holy Jewish figures. And why is it when these Jews reclaim land stolen from them by the Jordanians, it's called ethnic cleansing, like we see in Shimon HaTzadik Sheikh Jarrah? Israeli Arabs have the exact same rights, if not more, than Israeli Jews. They don't have to serve in the army, though they often do and can be promoted to top ranks. They're allowed to travel throughout Area A and can visit ancient Jewish cities like Shechem, Nablus, or Beit Lechem. They can visit our holiest site and pray there all they want. They make up the third largest political party in Israel and are members of the new coalition. They run banks, are police officers, doctors, lawyers. They learn in Israeli universities and are treated in their hospitals, and this claim of apartheid or inequality is nonsense. If you want to talk about the disparity between Israeli citizens and non-Israeli citizens, then you have to talk about the fact that in every country, citizens have different rights than non-citizens do. The Palestinians you're likely talking about are either citizens of the Palestinian Authority or Hamas, and therefore not within Israeli jurisdiction, though we do offer medical aid and supplies when we can.
How can you support an occupation of another people for 73 years?
Easy, we don't. Occupation would imply that Palestinians had sovereignty, which they didn't. It would imply an outside entity taking over by force rather than an indigenous people coming back to their homeland. It would imply that Jews started the war in 1948, which they most certainly did not. Here's the deal. You don't get to declare war on a people, especially a war with clear intent to commit a complete genocide of that people, and then play victim when you lose. You also don't get to complain about not having a country when you've rejected statehood 6 times, unless you're complaining to the people who have rejected that statehood. We see almost 2 million Israeli Arabs living in the state peacefully and with full rights. This clearly isn't an issue of us wanting an entirely Jewish state, as America is more white than Israel is Jewish.
How can a Jewish person from Miami Beach pack up his clothes and go to Israel tomorrow and become a citizen? And my ancestors have been there for thousands of years and they have.
Listen, if your leaders had decided to accept statehood instead of starting wars, you could have all the right of return policies you want. Also in 1949, as soon as the war had ended, Israel offered return to any displaced Arab as long as they were peaceful. Only 20% of displaced Arabs accepted. And Israel was also partially created for Jewish safety and security. The right of return law is to ensure that something like the Holocaust will never happen again, that Jews will always have a safe space, something we clearly need considering anti-Semitic attacks went up 500% last month. By the way, your ancestors couldn't have been there for thousands of years unless you're Jewish. That's the only population that's retained a presence in this land for that long. Arabs only got to the land in the 7th century of the Common Era, so at most your family's been there for 1400 years, which is unlikely. The claim of ethnic cleansing also leaves out the fact that after the Arabs declared a genocidal war against us, they advised Arabs living in the land to leave so it would be easier to kill all of us. They promised them they'd return to a Jew-free Palestine and then lost the war. And on top of that, displaced peoples are a reality of war. If that upsets you, take it up with the people who started the war, not the ones who defended themselves. Israel was fighting back against those who were trying to destroy them, and again offered return in 1949.
How can you justify surrounding 5 million people and walls?
Have you ever asked this question to an Egyptian? Because Egypt has just as much of a blockade on Gaza as Israel does. The only difference is Hamas isn't dedicated to Egypt's destruction, so they have less of a reason to have that blockade. Anyway, the blockade might have something to do with the fact that a violent, internationally recognized terrorist organization governs Gaza. But even then, they're constantly receiving aid in the form of food, water, and medical supplies from Israel. In the case of Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, calling it a wall is disingenuous. More than 97% of the security border is a fence. And how do I justify it? It might have something to do with the intifadas. You know, the reason the security border was put up in the first place? And it might have something to do with the fact that since the border was put into place, terror attacks have gone down 90%. But I guess wanting more civilians to live isn't a good enough excuse for you. And you wrote it's because they're a different religion when no, it's not. Again, Israel has citizens who are Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Druze, atheist, and so on. Israel is the only country in the Middle East with religious freedom, and this conflict is not about religion. Also, fun fact, there are over 400 mosques in Israel, which is about 5 times more than there were 30 years ago.
Can someone tell me, really, this is a sincere plea? I seriously don't understand.
I really hope you're being sincere because you seem to think that all of us are brainwashed despite the fact that you're asking questions with relatively simple answers. Well, as simple as you can get in a conflict like this. I hope this video cleared up some of your concerns and I wish you smooth sailing from here on out. I'm Hila Oz and you're watching JTV.